If you've been following the messages out from the IRS about the non-filers, about automated enforcement, if you listened to the podcast with Rocco Stecco, the Director of Collection Policy, you know that the tidal wave of work in representation that we've been waiting for is finally here. There has never been a better time than either to add this to your existing practice or build up this area of your practice. So now is the time to join Tax Rep Network. So the question is, what is inside Tax Rep Network? Well, there's over 180 hours of technical training on everything representation you can think of. There's 40 hours of marketing training to help you build your practice. There are dozens and dozens of marketing pieces and assets that you can use in your marketing. You also have access to the help desk. It's unlimited consultations with us, not only for technical tax cases, but also our marketing team to help you grow your practice. You'll get access to the entire Tax Rep community through Tax Rep Social. It's our social network that is inside Tax Rep that you can talk with other members, share best practices, get questions answered, everything. You get access to the business lien database. Over 3 million businesses are listed in our lien database. You can look at your area, identify those businesses that have tax liens filed against them, and do some targeted marketing. You get access to the entire library of books. It's a no-brainer. So join over 500 other members around the country and start building your rep practice, add that extra 100,000 this year in 2024, and get back control of your professional life so you don't have the tax season grind, or at least you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So go to taxrepllc.com, come in, join us. There's no contract, cancel anytime, but we think you're going to find that we are going to literally transform your practice. All right, taxrepllc.com, and we'll see you inside. How do we move documents back and forth with clients that are secure, that we know we have backup, so we have continuity, and that we can organize folders so that the clients know exactly where to send us the documents, which documents to send, and save us hours of time instead of going through some 300-page PDF to have everything organized. We use SmartVault. SmartVault is a secure way to get documents back and forth from clients and keep everything organized. And we've found that instead of 3 hours of onboarding clients with their documents for a collection case, let's say, and organizing everything, it takes us all of 15 minutes now, and everything comes in organized, right? If you go to smartvault.com/Eric/Green, you can book a demo with SmartVault, and if you tell them that you are affiliated with Tax Rep Network, they will give you a 20% discount. Okay, so go smartvault.com/Eric-Green, tell them you're affiliated with Tax Rep Network, get a 20% discount. Put this in place. It will actually make it more secure, avoid data breaches, and just organize everything for you. So how do we onboard clients? Make sure we get paid and not chase them. Now, you've heard on the podcast, I've talked about this. We get phone calls, we do an intake, we send a letter. We're too busy, all right? Out of sight, out of mind, right? So at the end of every year, we have 20 or 30 of these intakes that we never followed up and they never signed up. Well, we started using Ignition. Ignition allows us to automate the retainer agreement, getting all of our documents signed, getting the checklist out, all right, to the client. And if the client doesn't do anything, it automatically will follow up with them. We get alerted when they open and read it, when they sign it, and when we get paid, right? Ignition has literally cut our onboarding time. We're saving over $400 on every file, that we don't have to spend the time drafting, sending stuff, following up with the client, or not following up at all. Last year, we went from, let's say, that 20 to 30 letters we had left over. Let's assume it was 25. We only had 4. All right. We closed 21, and with our average case being around $8,300, I'll take the extra 160,000 of work. Ignition will literally automate all of this, and you make sure you get paid before you do anything, whether it's a tax return, whether it's an offer in compromise, whatever. So right now we have a special deal for our listeners. Go to ignitionapp.info/Eric Green. Use the code TaxRep-1, and that will entitle a new customer to get 50% off for the first 3 months they use Ignition Pro or Pro Plus. All right. So ignitionapp.info/Eric Green. Use the code TaxRep-1. Get 50% off for the first 3 months for either the Pro or the Pro Plus plans, and just automate your whole onboarding process. All right. It will literally change your practice. So what do we use at Green and Sklar's to manage all of our rep cases? Get transcripts, do the ongoing monitoring of transcripts for clients that are paying for it, do all of our resolution forms, our powers of attorney. We use Tax Help software. All right. And I've had Roger Nemeth on the podcast. It is the best software in this space, bar none. Okay. Honestly, and the report, when bankruptcy attorneys ask us and we can send them the report, we charge $1,000. All right. You can actually go to taxhelpsoftware.com/TRN, as in Tax Rep Network, taxhelpsoftware.com/TRN, and that will get you, if you want, a fully loaded premium product from Tax Help Software for 6 months for only $250. It's a no-brainer. If you haven't tried Tax Help Software, go check it out. It is literally what we use to run our entire tax practice. Right? taxhelpsoftware.com/TRN, right? That will get you the opportunity to get the fully loaded premium product for 6 months for only $250. As you know from the podcast, S corporations and reasonable compensation of the owners of S corps is a hot button topic right now with the IRS. In 2024, they are going after S corps and reasonable comp. So how do we make sure that our client is taking reasonable comp? How do we sell clients on converting from an LLC to an S corp? You need to have a reasonable comp report. If you do a 990, you're supposed to check that box that you have a reasonable comp report that backs up those salaries that are being taken by that nonprofit. Do you? The answer is RC reports. RC reports will break down exactly in line with what the IRS is looking for and what the case law says. It will go through what the owner does, the different duties, and how much time they spend. It will generate a report based on the size of their industry, the size of the company, and the geographic location. With that report in hand, we have never had an auditor challenge it. Generally, you give them the report that backs up the number. They'll flip through, and say, "Can we keep a copy of this?" By all means, that's your copy, and that's the end of the issue. Where clients haven't taken it, we have used RC reports to actually negotiate for what the real number is, because the government's going to get super aggressive and try to make everything salary. That's not the rule. All right. You can save $100 on the premium account for RC reports by going out to trn.rcreports.com. TRN is in Tax Rep Network, .rcreports.com. It'll save you $100 on a premium account. And again, remember, S Corp and C Corp clients, 990 clients, they have to have this. And this is something you charge for. This is a moneymaker for us. It's not another piece of overhead. I think it cost us around, with a discount, like $1,300 or something like that, because we get the premium product. We run many reports. We're charging, between $750 and $1,000 at a clip. We'll bring in somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 on that software. Right? This isn't just some overhead we're going to eat. Clients who want to have an S Corp, C Corp, or have a 990, they need to pay for this. It's part of the deal. They're expected to have it. So trn.rcreports.com, go save $100, right? Implement this And trust me, not only will you make money with it, you will bulletproof your clients' returns and allow you to sleep much better at night. Everyone, welcome to this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green. I have back one of my favorite guests, Joe Woodard. And Joe has been on before. We've talked about what is probably the best conference in the country. And I'll give you my thoughts on why. Scaling New Heights. It's going to be this June. And what are the dates, Joe? Because
June 19th through the 22nd.
Yep. And I am speaking, I think, every day, Sunday to Wednesday.
Yeah, I think you are as well. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I got to tell you, IRS is very hot right now and going up. And we were talking beforehand, and I'm going to just follow up. The reason it's my favorite show, and I think I mentioned this last year when you were on. Initially, look, I'm a lawyer, and lawyers are under always pressure to bill. And so what I do is I show up at the show, I go find the room, do the talk, go back to my room and bill. It's what we do. And it was Don Brolin, who we were in Disney. We were in Disney pre-COVID. Well, what is that, 17 or 18?
Yeah, like 2020 was COVID. So yeah, so it'd have to be 17 is when you came for the first time. Yes.
Yeah. And she dragged me you got to come to the exhibit hall. I'm like, why? Anyway, mind blowing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the largest accounting tech conference in the country.
It's the largest accounting technology showcase. Yeah. There are two conferences that have more attendees. We have the most accounting technology in one roof. Yes.
And it's we were talking beforehand before we started about entrepreneurship. It is really, into my mind, it's the best conference for that. And for those listening who've not been, here's why you got to go. Almost anything that you need to solve for, there is a solution. And the reason I think it's so critical for entrepreneurs is, the big firms, Joe, again, we were talking about this, they have a committee, they're going to vet it, they're making big investments. But to most practitioners, small firms, solos, one of the big issues has always been can you scale? And, it was the old pyramid, hire a lot of staff, if you can find staff and all of that. Now, by the way, now you're an HR person with the staff. Nowadays, you can automate onboarding, you can automate the prep of the return, you can automate the bookkeeping. So now for those, in fact, actually, we were talking, it was a couple of years ago now. Remember when Intuit started the automated bookkeeping?
Yeah, the QuickBooks Live.
Yeah, and then we had a bunch of the pro advisors going to Meltdown. They're competing with me. And we were talking about, I think you brought up, look, it's a mind shift. You can look at it that way if you're closed-minded, or you can view this as, well, wait a minute. If I can automate that, now my job as entrepreneur, go get more clients. In other words, if you build the machine, now you want to shove as much through the machine as you can, right? And so with your same footprint, be able to generate more revenue. And that to me is, I think, the biggest. I mean, I want to talk about all the different tracks because, again, if you've not been to the show, this is one I would say you got to go.
Well, thank you for that, Eric. I appreciate you saying that because I know you know a lot of shows. What I will tell you is the automation play is a massive opportunity, and you were right to mention QuickBooks Live because the fact that multi-billion-dollar global corporations are getting involved in bookkeeping is an indicator of the positivity of this future. The approachable market, or what they call the TAM, the total available market, still has a lot of room to grow, even if you have scaled competitors. But what you're seeing is Intuit not being alone. And that's what I like to tell folks is it's not that Intuit is the person infringing onto your territory. The category is scaling upward because it is now massively scalable. Intuit's just participating in, and maybe you could argue being a market leader of, a category that already was going to exist with or without them. And they didn't even invent it. Bench is arguably probably the one that could be credited with inventing it at scale. But, if you take Pilot, QuickBooks Live, Belay, KPMG even took a stab at this, and then their portfolio was purchased by a company called Decimal. There's a company called Highline now that's leaning into the scaled CAS model with extreme automation, and that's just off the top of my head. The Walmarts and Targets, and I guess if you want to call Pilot the Amazons, because it's Bezos, the Amazons of bookkeeping are going to enter the space, have entered the space, and are going to increasingly do it better, especially with the emergence of artificial intelligence. So they're here. If Intuit were to completely vacate the space, they'd still be here. And I should mention, because it's very apropos to your audience, H&R Block, now bookkeeping, 7,000 brick and mortar locations is their target, at a physical office near you. Your members have been dealing with that H&R Block business for a long time. Now enter the bookkeeping space. So now we're all in the same playing field. But just like the tax preparers were not run out of business by H&R Block, bookkeepers will not be run out of business by QuickBooks Live or H&R Block or Pilot or the combination of all of them. It's about how we respond. Do we stay modern like they're being modern? And more importantly, do we do things that they cannot or ought not do? H&R Block ought not represent, I'm sorry to say this because H&R Block may be listening in or somebody might tell on me. In Joe Woodard's personal opinion, H&R Block ought not be the place you go to for representation services. They are a 1040 house. And again, I want to do fairness to HR Block. I'm sure that they have very respectful people doing all sorts of services. I'm saying whenever I'm undergoing an audit, whenever I have to have somebody advocating for me to the IRS, I want somebody I know, somebody I trust, an individual or group of individuals where I'm very important to them. I'm a significant engagement for them at that time. And I know human to human, we have a very significant professional relationship. And that's what I mean by you ought to go to like one of your listeners. So what accountants need to do is they need to do the same thing tax professionals have done. They need to move into more complex returns, like partnership returns. They need to move into more specialization, and they need to move into different categories within the industry, like law representation. Now, I know you have to be a lawyer to do the law part, but the representation part, CPA, EA, and of course, listening to you, Eric. So accountants, you have similar pathways. Maybe it's not with the tax piece if you don't do that, though I would encourage you to go get an EA, and mine as well. It's very lucrative. Eric could feel your earful on how it's going to be a bubble of work demand. And that's called a SAM, sales addressable market. That's about to explode. But even apart from that, stay within the client accounting services swim lane. You can do the accounting services, which you're already doing, but you can also offer controllership services, back office process outsourcing, financial planning analysis services. And if you go beyond accounting services, you've stepped outside the arena of what all those scaled competitors I mentioned do. None of them do controllership. Very few of them, I should say, do controllership. Very few of them do financial planning and analysis services. And the larger you get, the less of it they do, because that's not their game. Their game is simple, efficient, fully automatable, and scale. I mean, scale in the tens of thousands, millions of users. They're not going to get down into those trenches of granularity like you can.
I think for the folks listening, and I've mentioned this before on the show, Joe. In fact, I opened my book talking about this, where I was strung out from 7 days a week, crazy. And a friend of mine, Brent Robertson from Fathom, not the software company, but it's a consulting firm here in Connecticut, said, what do you want your day to look like? Your firm, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, what do you want? And I would advise everyone to do that, because if you said to your practice, look, I can't keep prepping returns, whatever. Look, you can go get more bookkeeping if you can automate it. Yeah, you have to review, but you can automate the organizer with Liscio. You can organize the preparation of the return with Gruntworks. You can get your stuff signed, Ignition, automatically takes care of my agreements, gets me paid. Tax help software, I can pull transcripts, I can monitor the account. One person can now do way more. And if you can even scale further with actually some staff, so to me, the reason to go get back to scaling is when you map out what you want it to look like, and you can, when you do that, you'll find your pain points. Oh, I hate the input. I hate this. I hate that.
Because these people have already innovated around your pain,
But now you go to scaling, and like I know the 5 vendors I want to go talk to. I've already looked in advance. I know where they are on the floor.
You have a plan.
They're doing a power breakfast or they're doing a presentation. I want to go see it because I want to leave there. So this coming season, I don't have that pain anymore.
I like that. Yeah. So the big takeaways first is that there are already people who are highly innovative, who have discovered your pain. Your pain is not unique to you. Yep. They've discovered your pain within the category of accountancy, and they have developed technologies to address that pain. So that's number one. Number two, I really like what you said, Eric, about having a plan. It's not like a huge floor like a boat show where you're walking between convention concourses, but for the United States is the biggest technology expo there is. It's the second largest exhibit hall. And therefore, you're going to want to have a plan. Almost 140 different technology exhibits and 4 days. Yep. Only 3 days where the exhibit floor is open, and you're learning through a lot of that. So make the most of your time, pre-research around your goals. I would say that on the training side too. Yep. And then map a course right to the right booth number and have the meaningful conversations you need to have. If time's left over, wander around.
Yep.
But don't wander, plan.
Well, and frankly, even beyond the tech, any show, like I am going to be at the ABA tax meeting this week in Washington. I've already gone through the agenda. I know what panels I want to sit in on. You will get more out of anything if you go in with a plan versus I'm just going to go to a conference and whatever it is. You're spending a lot of time and money. Yep. I tend to go with a plan, and certain conferences are for certain things. To me, on the accounting and the tech side, scaling is it. For the government stuff, it's ABA in Washington. This one meeting, everyone at IRS and DOJ can hop on the metro and come over. So you have everybody there in one place. So that kind of networking is invaluable. And so you go in with a plan. But speaking of entrepreneurship, I mean, you've got stuff, you have tracks on accounting / bookkeeping, but accounting, tax, all kinds of tech and practice management. The other thing that no one talks about, but we all know, it's all the events around scale. I mean, the major vendors, in fact, I've been talking to Rick on your team. Yep. The tax rep members, we want to have dinner.
Yeah, we just approved you guys for that social. I don't know if we got back to you. So yeah, you're going to be getting together with some of your folks. Those micro networking events or even macro networking events, because Bill is hosting a poolside social for all of the Woodard members. That's hundreds of people. So you can have these macro events, you can have micro events like yours, very highly specialized around and niche around a particular topic and group of people. Top 100 firms are going to be getting together, all their CAS folks and CAS leadership. When you're in those kind of environments where it might be 15 or 20 people and all 15 or 20 people are exactly like you, that could be worth your entire trip to a conference. So please do seek those specialized events out.
Last year, Xero threw a big party. Xero, the accounting software company. I had people, and this was why I contacted your team. I had set up our group dinner. It's like 10, 12. It's the tax rep members. Actually, last year was closer to 25. But anyway, and they started messaging me. I want to go to the Xero party. I want to talk to this salesperson. I want to meet the person who's, because they bring all their people. And so that party, yeah, it's a party, but it is a time you can sit and talk to them socially, and really get. I picked Ignition. I picked up inside stuff hanging out with Kate and Jenny from Ignition in the evening. I mean, I saw them at the booth, but in the sitting around shooting the breeze, I learned a lot from them, and that's which was why I told Jeff, like, yeah, we got to do this. Versus,
So, Eric, can I unpack it this way? Because this will help your listeners to get a framework, no matter what conference you're going to. If it's Scaling New Heights or ABA or whoever it is, your event, Eric, you should always seek out what I call the 4-3 things. And it's phrased that way so it'll catch your brain. The 4-3 things. So find the 3 people. Number one, the 3 people that you met new, that you want to stay connected to throughout the year. And that's what you were just getting at. Just one of these relationships might be worth the whole plane flight, but find the 3.
Yep.
Because you can't stay in a meaningful relationship with everyone you meet at a show. And if you have that framework, you'll just get overwhelmed, or you'll overload your CRM, and nothing will happen. So the 3 people. The second 3 things, the information that will have a significant impact when I get back to the office. So this would be factual information, empirical information, some stat that I saw about a market opportunity, some technology somebody's using to significantly increase efficiencies or profits or whatever it is. And I shouldn't have said technology, because that's actually just category. It's just strategy. This is all information. So the 3 things I learned, the 3 people I met, now the technology. The 3 technology solutions that I want to vet and or deploy actually work into a technology plan, not just toy around with, not shiny object syndrome. These are the things I know I want to solve for, and I'm going to work them into a concerted plan over the next 12 months. And then the 4th is 3 inspirational moments. This wouldn't apply to every show. Some shows only focus on empirical stuff. We also have some professional development. We have some inspirational speakers.
Yep.
So the 3 inspirational thoughts that may actually change the way I view the world, or view others around me, or view myself. So the 3 things again are 3 inspirational moments, 3 very powerful educational moments, 3 technologies, 3 people. Those are your 4-3 things. And if you can walk away with those 12 things at the end of any conference, it is almost always worth the flight and the registration and the time out of the office.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, you've always been, in my mind, on sort of, honestly, the cutting edge of pushing people. I mean, when we first met, Scaling New Heights, and you had the whole, like, you were mountain climbing, Face the Yeti, and, all of that. This year's theme is Boldly Go.
Yes. We have a theme for every year. And yeah, I loved Face the Yeti. If I want to go back and have a nostalgic moment with you, it's perhaps one of my favorite themes, because the Yeti is that obstacle that would stand between you and whatever you're trying to achieve. Like, if you're listening in here and you're like, all right, well, Joe, the TAM, the SAM, this whole SAM explosion, the IRS, I know the press releases, I've seen what they're doing with the hiring and the enforcement, and I know there's an opportunity, but standing between me and actually opening a representation practice feels like there's a Yeti standing there scaring me off that mountain, right? And if you're a bookkeeper in here and you're like, but Joe, you just said controllership, back office process outsourcing, financial analysis, feels like there's this Yeti standing between me and achieving that level of scale, or that height and that altitude in my practice. That was the very point of that theme, is identify the Yeti. But what I liked so much about the theme, Eric, was, when I did my research on what the Yeti was before launching the theme, in the Hindu religion, the Yeti is not a monster. The Yeti is a redirector. So meaning that when that Yeti stands between you, right in the middle of your path, and roars, what the Yeti is saying in the Hindu religion is, it's testing us to see if we're worthy of the path, or if this is the correct path. Because if we're not worthy of the path, we could hurt ourselves. We need to go back and get more equipment, more tools. And if we need to go on a different path, the Yeti steers us that way. So I used the personal example of the Yeti by saying that my wife and I have her permission to share this publicly. My wife and I were going through a struggle staying pregnant, and it was just crazy how many times we had that lost pregnancy. And we had finally given up. My wife said, "I just don't have the emotional fortitude for this anymore. It's just been too much." And right after we gave up, the Yeti blocked our path. About a year after that, we got this phone call, and we weren't even trying to actively adopt. We just got this phone call because somebody had remembered that we wanted a child, and an opportunity came up for private adoption. Next thing we know, 6 hours after getting the phone call, we're the guardians of this child, 3 days old, and a year later, we're her adopted parents. And so what the Yeti did is the Yeti. I'm thankful for the Yeti. I'm thankful that we couldn't have a biological child. I'm thankful that the Yeti blocked the path, because the Yeti and the wisdom of the Yeti was redirecting my path. So if you feel like you've tried representation and it didn't work for you, and you just feel like this isn't my mountain, maybe it's just saying take a different approach to that journey. Or if you're an accountant in here and you've tried financial analysis or you've tried controllership and it didn't work, maybe the Yeti's saying take a different path to up the mountain. The mountain's correct. Your path was wrong. And what you could do is come to conferences like Eric's conference, my conference, and discover other paths that may actually work for you. Now I want to get into Boldly Go, because I knew I got on a tangent there, but you mentioned your 17 conference being your first one, and I'm so passionate about that.
I remember you had someone actually walking around on stilts dressed as a Yeti.
Yeah, we did. We had like quite the production.
Yeah.
Well, this year it's Boldly Go with a little bit of a nod to Star Trek, yes, because I'm a Trekkie. But the idea is not about, strange new worlds and exploration, wagon train to the stars, as Gene Roddenberry called it. Boldly Go is about the courage to embrace this new normal. We are talking about direction. You will find pathways, but we're going to define why it's scary. We have Michio Kaku. Dr. Kaku is coming to talk about quantum computing, and he was of the think tank. He's a theoretical physicist of the level of, say, Stephen Hawking, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was part of the century or the decades of scientific thought that discovered quantum principles. He's one of the smartest human beings on planet Earth. And he was interviewed recently on 60 Minutes about this very topic, and also on the Woodard podcast about this very topic of quantum computing. And what Dr. Kaku says in his book, The Quantum Supremacy, is quantum computing is about to intersect artificial intelligence, where the mind, artificial intelligence, is only as powerful right now as its brain, the hardware of the computers. And when quantum computing is introduced, the brain is going to become exponentially, people use that figuratively, I mean it literally, exponentially powerful. So that creates this world of opportunity and fear. And anytime opportunity and fear coexist, you must be bold. Mm-hmm. And so artificial intelligence, quantum computing, scaled competitions, massive automation, this whole surge of compliance that's taking place in the IRS world, all of these are both opportunity and fear. And John Maxwell has a powerful definition of courage that I'll introduce here, that I'll be mentioning in my keynote. He says courage is proceeding afraid. It's powerful. So I want your listeners to proceed afraid and grab the opportunities within this realm of uncertainty that we're facing. Because if they don't, I believe they'll look back on this decade and kick themselves for not giving it a try.
It's I've heard it put slightly different. I have two friends, brothers I grew up with, who are former Navy SEALs. Steve Just, one of the brothers, was on the podcast. We were talking in the podcast about, like, how do people get through buds, right? Among some of the hardest training in the world and all that. And we were talking about keeping your world small. Like, you could think about 8 months of this, but you can say, I got to get to breakfast. Just get to breakfast, lunch, dinner, get back in bed. And if I'm going to quit, you know what? I'll quit tomorrow, not today. but we were talking about, because I said, I don't know that I could throw myself out of a plane. Even if you got through buds, which I wouldn't, I don't know. And he said, it takes courage. And his definition of courage is being afraid, but going anyway.
Well, it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And so
Motion with fear with motion.
So, but what I think for the audience, the idea that, well, he's just like a machine. He said the first time guys wet themselves. I mean, it's frightening. But you're looking at somebody who is afraid. But that's why if you weren't afraid, you wouldn't take courage.
Mhm.
The idea is, I'm afraid of this, but I'm going. And it's interesting. So I was telling this, and my wife reminded me of this. When I first created my certificate training program, I pitched it to NAEA, NATP, CCH, Intuit, and Drake. No one had any interest in it except for CCH. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to record it. And I really got cold feet. I'm going to be on video to potentially hundreds of thousands of accountants. Who am I? And there are people that are better than I am, and they're going to see that, whatever. And I really began thinking, oh, wait, can I get back out of this? I don't know that I want to do this. And I spoke to Sidney Kess, who passed away in the fall at I think Sid was 97. But he founded the AICPA's Engage Conference, CCH. I mean, he's a legend in my world. And I told him, like, I don't know how I want to do this. And I started telling him why. He said, Eric, you've worked, you've built, you pitched, you this to get to this point. You got there. There's the door. First of all, anyone who's really like the people at the top of the hill, they're not watching your videos. So, the idea that they're going to buy your video is they're not. And he said, but at some point, you got to get over the fear. He said, you're at a moment, I don't want to be rude, go in or go home. And I remember thinking, I'm not going home. I have too much in this. And it went fine. And the comments generally were good. And you know what? I got over it. And
yes.
But it's
but what you're identifying here is this bit of an imposter syndrome, which is a big problem, especially in the industry I service, because with you, in your case, you're a lawyer. I mean, you have a legal degree, you're a licensed attorney, you've got some credentialing there. You've got something to bolster you forward. Enrolled agents have a designation, CPAs have a designation. A lot of the folks that come to Scaling New Heights have no credentials whatsoever. And they're not CPAs, they're not enrolled agents, and there is no federally recognized credentialing for public bookkeeping in the United States. There's one in Australia. There's one in most of the other economically developed countries in the world have one. We don't. We're the Wild West out here. So in the absence of credentialing, their imposter syndrome is really strong, right? But also I would say if you're a CPA and you've never done representation here, or an EA and all you've done is preparation, see, you could have the same imposter syndrome. Yeah, well, I had the letters, Joe, but that, to me, to go out and actually have my client in my hands as I'm protecting them through this process with the IRS, imposter syndrome. So you start telling yourself stuff, this internal narrative. And what everybody should take away is Eric overcame, not a Yeti, he overcame an actual block to a path he was supposed to walk. And that's different, right? That's the lies we tell ourselves, the limits we put on ourselves, the voice of fear that instead of it just being a voice of caution, it becomes a voice of constraint. And when you overcame that, Eric, you entered into a whole new realm of possibilities. So I would encourage everybody listening here, it's not imposter syndrome if you know what you need to know. And if you can navigate the process to the benefit of your clients, well, not perfectly, but well. And if you know in your heart that if you do mess up, you're going to make it right because that's who you are, now obviously don't try to do it without the proper credentials. but my point is embrace what you need to embrace.
And so for me, when I first went to the American Bar, I was blown away that there were a group of people who knew everyone at the IRS. They would present on this, and I wanted to be that. And there's a very, again, my world, really well-known estate planner, Lou Mazzullo. He's got a bunch of books, whatever. And I remember, and I know because Connecticut Bar paid him a lot of money to show up for one day and give and do a talk. And I remember telling one of the older attorneys, I want to be him. And he told me, Lou didn't wake up one day as Lou now. He wrote books, he went to conferences, he spoke, he probably didn't get great ratings, and he worked at it. Now he's 65 and he's an expert. It's like the 10,000 hour rule.
Yes,
If
exactly.
you are a bookkeeper and you're gonna hang up, what are you hung up about? Well, maybe I don't know everything about accounting. Go take classes. I don't really know QuickBooks. Go get certified. You can become a QuickBooks Pro advisor.
But what you choose to do is so important, Eric, because he chose to do something that elevated his pathway. 10,000 hours, 5 full-time professional years.
Yep.
If that's all you did was develop it. So yes, choose wisely though. Make sure the path doesn't run into dead ends, that it does advance your career, and make sure that the incremental steps you do have an appropriate measure of courage attached to them along the way. Because for some people, just writing the book would be the mountaintop. But you are absolutely right. The writing the book is a milestone along the journey, right? If that happens to be one of your milestones. But it's those small wins that add up to the big win. And the other thing I want to say too is no matter where you get, I may be the host of the nation's largest accounting technology showcase and one of the largest communities of standalone CAS practices. Yes, okay, I've achieved some things. There's always somebody who is that you look up to and say, okay, our next level is to get to where they're at. And that does not indict you. It doesn't make you a failure. There'll always be somebody higher than you, and so it's not a matter of comparing yourself to others. It's a matter of your own journey and advancing it. And how are you doing your absolute best to advance that for yourself? And is the direction right?
And be willing to invest in yourself. All right.
Yes.
I mean, to put it a little more harshly, I've told people, put down the iPad, turn the TV off, put down the phone, and get to work. I mean,
Get to work.
I never really dealt with reasonable comp, and I had this one horror story, whatever. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to do the next guidebook in my series on that, roll up my sleeve. And you know what? I often, if I don't know a topic, I'm going to speak on it. Because
then you got to learn. Yes, it
will,
puts the pressure on.
Oh, I'm going to dive in. And the other thing about the speaking, and Sid told me this, and for anyone out there, I don't know. You're still probably know more than 90% of the people in the room.
Yes.
Even though you don't know everything. And by the way, if I get a question I don't know, don't BS. People
No.
are like,
Just like, I don't know that. I have no idea.
I think the answer is this, but you know what? Email me. I need to research it.
That's your magic button. Email me after and I'll research that for you.
Yeah.
And people respect that. They don't expect you to be omniscient. They just expect you to cover the topic. That's it. And so all these things will help you inoculate fear. Absolutely. And then I'm reading a book right now. And I know you're going to ask me the author's name, and I'm horrible with Audible and authors. So I'm going to actually look at my phone here while I'm on webcam with you, and I'm going to get that. But it's called Unwinding Anxiety, and it's by Judson Brewer. So Unwinding Anxiety by Judson Brewer. And I know we haven't talked about anxiety here. We've talked about overcoming fear and having courage, but they're inseparable because a uncertainty is what breeds anxiety. Anxiety drives the wrong patterns of behavior. Like you said, put down the iPad, turn off the television, get to work. Well, what stops us from turning off the television, getting to work is the television is our self-medication to numb the anxiety we're experiencing over the fact that to get to that particular work scares us, makes us nervous, makes us anxious. So this book will give you a lot of the information you need to jumpstart action. And then, as we talked about, motion in the presence of fear is courage. If you can do that, you're bold. If you're bold, you can go, and that's boldly go.
Right.
So there it is.
I have in a recommended book in my members area, The Alter Ego Effect, which is
I'll have to read that one then.
It's very similar. Well, they talk about, and I'll give you one of the stories. Young woman who sings in the church choir, phenomenal voice, but will never go anywhere if she won't get on stage and do rock and roll, right? More, modern. And it's just not the way she's brought up to dress that way, to act that way. She created a alter ego. And so, though she was who she is, Sasha Fierce was the one who went on stage and did all of that. Bo Jackson was interviewed for the book and said Bo Jackson never scored anything. I forget the name of his alter ego.
Right.
He did everything. And David Goggins, who's a former Navy SEAL who really grew up hard, talks about having an alter ego of Goggins, and Goggins will go where people don't want to go. He'll go dark. He'll do violence.
Well, what I like about this is it resets, it lifts the anchors of the past.
Right.
It's a good mental exercise, as long as you come short of multi-personality disorder, I guess, but it's a good exercise because it does lift the boat anchors that are locking you into past patterns.
And the singer, which I didn't realize till I said, and eventually Beyonce didn't, in fact, she had an album, I think something like, Farewell Sasha Fierce. I don't need her anymore. I got this.
Because Frank, I'm going to butcher this because I don't know the exact quote, but Benjamin Franklin said something similar to, I paraphrase, you're not lying to yourself. You're agreeing with yourself about an inevitable future. So that's kind of the same idea is if I ever identify with Joe Woodard, the author, then I'll start writing. But if I think I have to publish a book before I become an author, I'm going to catch 22. So all of these things, folks, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because everything we're talking about are the mechanisms for Boldly Go. And it's exactly why we created that theme. Yeah.
No. And, and for those folks who are like, I wanted to be, so again, to use myself, I want to be like those guys. In fact, one of them, Chuck Reddick, was our IRS commissioner. But, here's what I'm going to suggest, and Joe, I suspect you're going to agree with me. If you see someone that you admire, I want to be like that. This isn't rocket science, unless you're a rocket scientist. This isn't rocket. Just go do what they do. So, for instance, I got onto a committee at the ABA and I volunteered, and I'm going to give them some of my time, to be on the IRS liaison committee. So now I'm meeting the people at the IRS because that's what Brian Scarlatos and Chuck Reddick and Steve Tosher and all those people I looked up to, Frank Agostino, Carolyn Stroh, that's what they did. 20 years earlier, that's what they did. They created all of the controversy forums that I would go to. But I wanted to do it for marketing, so I created the Iris Representation Conference. Same formula, same thing. I didn't create anything. I took what they had, carbon copied it, made it my own, and did that. And you know what? The formula.
Isn't that what everybody who hangs their shingle does? Yeah. They're not creating a new category. They're opening a law practice. They're opening a tax practice. It's the same thing. Yes.
Right. And you just. So, if you see somebody, if you see someone in the gym and, well, I want to look like that. Well, look at what they're doing and do that. Right. They may have to build up to it, right? But it's not, this isn't mind bending.
It's not. And it is about the micro actions. Because if we think, what it takes to actually achieve the result, that's your 10,000 hours, it'll be daunting. And we're just going to go back and binge watch Game of Thrones or whatever. Right. But I know we've been telling a lot of stories here, but I'll just tell one more because it's had a radical impact on my life. happened to be sitting next to somebody on an airplane. I never talk to people in airplanes. This was such an approachable, likable guy. He was, he looked like maybe he was 10 years older than I am. I'm 56. He was actually 82. He does Ironman runs and things like that. He had just finished doing a 100-mile run, 82 years old. And he's, I think, the oldest that has done it within his time frame, or fastest within the time frame, or something. And he was a doctor, retired doctor. And I said to him, well, I said, what do I need to do? Because I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy must have started at age 30. He must have always been a super athlete, must be a genetic thing. And what he said is, around in my mid 50s, he had no idea what my age was. He said, in my mid 50s, I started walking, and I just kind of walked till I got tired. And then next day I walked until I got tired. And the next day I walked until I got tired. And now I'm running 100 miles in a weekend at 82. And so something just clicked in my brain, because you read, you hear 100 people a day probably on television say, exercise more, see all the articles. Something snapped in my brain at that moment. And what made the difference, Eric, wasn't, hey, go out and become a 100-mile marathon runner by the time you're 82. He just said, I walked until I got tired. And I thought, anybody can walk until they get tired. So I did. And it was about a mile, and I got tired, and then 2 miles. And now I'm walking 4 miles every day, because that's when I get tired. That's all it takes. Just do the same thing with anything in life.
Right. No, just really, here's what it comes down. It's the discipline.
It's the discipline.
You still have to get out the door and go walk.
Yes.
You can just do that. And it takes, I think it was 21 days to create a habit.
Yes. So bigger, better offer.
Yep.
The bigger, better offer is key to discipline. And they talked about unwinding anxiety. So my bigger, better offer is, I want to be like this guy when I'm 82. Right. I'm 40 years older than my daughter. So my daughter will be 42 whenever I'm 82. My grandkids will still be teenagers when I'm 82. I want to see them go off to college. Right. That's a bigger, better offer, but it's way out there someplace. I can ignore that for today. The bigger, better offer for me, immediately following this podcast recording, I'm going to go on one of my 4-mile walks. The bigger, better offer is binge watching a television show mindlessly while sipping bourbon. That sounds fun, actually, right now. The bigger, better offer is my highly enjoyable audiobook and endorphins, right? And if I trade that out, it doesn't take that much discipline to say, well, you know what? Maybe I'll still have the bourbon around 10 o'clock, but I'm not going to do it at 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go get the endorphins. They feel better than bourbon. And I'm going to get the books. I love audiobooks. So this is an enticement for me to have an hour of uninterrupted audiobook time. And I'm off to my walk. Give yourself that bigger, better offer.
Right. And it will pay back in dividends.
It'll pay back in dividends. You're absolutely right. All right. And that's all components of this Bowley Go thing. I mean, we're going to do this, in June in Orlando.
Absolutely. So everyone, I'll put a link in the description. But go to woodard.com, WOODARD.com. Scaling New Heights 2024 is there. You can look at the vendors that are coming. You'll get to see the agenda. Unbelievable keynote speakers, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'll be there for lack of anything else, but I'll be there. And Orlando, there's a whole host of good reasons.
And the venue is spectacular. It's a great place too to bring your family. They can hang out for the week. There's a whole aquatic center in the hotel, and it's right across the street, literally right across the interstate from Disney World. So, yeah.
No, and again, not only go with the plan.
Yes, go with the plan.
Take a few hours, look at your practice. Where are my pain points? Look at who's going to be there, the vendors, the tracks, the agenda. And go, and people are always like, well, it costs this or whatever. It's going to pay back tenfold, 20-fold. All right.
If you do your 4 or 3 things and you're intentional and work it, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. So, Joe, it's always a pleasure to have you on. We got to do this more often, actually.
I know, it's great. It's a lot of fun, Eric.
It's just always that, tax season and then this and then after scaling, and you try to. It's a
Right.
big show to run.
Well, let's be intentional about it. Let's do it again. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No. Listen, thank you. And everyone, thanks for listening in. Again, woodard.com. If you have any questions, you can message me. My whole team's going to be there. Tax rep is going to be there. It's a lot of fun, and you will find a solution to whatever your problem is. I mean, within reason.
Within reason, within accountancy and within reason.
Medical advice. Joe's not into the medical advice yet, but
no, exactly.
Yeah. But you will find a solution to what your headache is. And if nothing else, you may just find a new solution, better solution, tweak what you got. But this is really the time to take stock and make sure everything's in place. So come next fall, you're not groaning. Oh, it's coming again.
That you're all prepared for this next busy season. So.
Right. All right. Listen, Joe, thank you. Thank everyone for listening, and see you next week on the podcast.